my, carrying such a large suitcase. Are you going on a trip? No, I'm going back to my parents' house. What? It seems mother-in-law couldn't quite process what I had just said. Her eyes widened in surprise. I'm tired of the housework and the constant nagging. Please have a happy life with Connor. What? Wait a minute. I slipped past the objecting mother-in-law and headed outside. Dragging my heavy suitcase, I got on the bus to return to my family's home. My name is Cecilia. I married Connor 4 years ago, and now we rent a one-bedroom apartment where we live together. The apartment we rent is a moderately high-end place, costing $2,000 a month, something Connor can't afford on his own. The reason we can live in such a luxurious apartment is solely due to my workload and salary. I'm somewhat embarrassed to say it, but I'm an ambitious career woman working in sales for a large corporation, working from morning till night. Starting early and working late is the norm for me, sacrificing my private life to stay on top in sales. I started living in this apartment because I wanted to enjoy a lavish lifestyle at least while I'm home. But my luxurious and peaceful days are beginning to slip away. The cause of this disturbance is mother-in-law, who has recently become a permanent guest in our apartment. I sometimes ask Connor to do the housework since I'm busy with my job, but instead of doing it himself, he calls mother-in-law and unloads the work on her. And mother-in-law, being mother-in-law, willingly comes over and does all the housework, so Connor's domestic skills never improve. Initially visiting our apartment twice a week, she now seems to live in our place. If it were just housework, I might have simply been grateful and not complained. What's been bothering me is mother-in-law's excessive interference. Why doesn't Cecilia quit her job after all this time? I can't possibly tell her it's because Connor's earnings are insufficient, so I reply with a shallow, "I'm sorry." She even adds, "A good wife bears children early on." The comments like that continue to trouble me. Certainly, I couldn't say that Connor was cooperative. His old-fashioned remarks, even anachronistic at times, were draining me, especially after long hours at work. Finally, he started to say things like, "You fold the clothes wrong," or "Using the dishwasher is not good." I couldn't help but wish he would leave if he continued to complain. Of course, I wasn't just silently putting up with this. I talked to Connor about it, but he wouldn't take me seriously. At first, he seemed to be listening to me sincerely, but in the end, he always sided with his mother, saying, "But Mom is right." When I lost patience with his mother, who continued to live with us without paying rent or for food, and demanded she either pay or leave, Connor sided with mother-in-law and decided to let her live with us for free. Slowly but surely, the paradise I had created with my earnings was being taken over by mother-in-law. One day, after talking to my parents on the phone, I began planning a small party and invited them to our home. My mother's birthday was coming up, and I was likely to get paid time off. My parents had mentioned that they wanted to see my apartment, so I thought it was a good opportunity. I excitedly started planning and called out to Connor, who was lying on the sofa browsing on his mobile phone. "Hey, I'm thinking of inviting my parents over next month. Will you join us, Connor?" Connor and my parents had only met once, during our marriage meeting, and they hadn't interacted much. I was hoping it would be a pleasant dinner party and that mother-in-law could join if she was available. "What? There's no way we're letting your poor-looking parents into this apartment," He snapped. "Excuse me? How can you say that?" I yelled, shocked by his comment. Connor put down his phone, plugged his ears, and glared at me.
"But it's true. They were wearing cheap clothes when we went for the marriage meeting,"
he said. I struggled to contain my anger, my fists shaking. I was used to be spoken to harshly, but I couldn't tolerate my parents being insulted. My anger boiled up, and I had to be careful not to scream at Connor. I don't want to say this, but I started trying to calm myself. Your mother-in-law is no different from my mother. What's so poor about my parents? Are your parents big corporate bosses or something? Of course that was not the case. His father was a salaried worker, and mother-in-law was a homemaker from an ordinary family. Still, Connor scowled, annoyed by my words.
"At least they make more money than your parents. We didn't have to rely on a scholarship for college like you did,"
he said proudly, puffing out his chest. I took out a scholarship because I wanted to go to college on my own, without depending on my parents. I almost said, "It's not like you, unable to leave your parents," but I swallowed my words. Fighting here wouldn't solve anything. After all, I just want to invite my parents to the apartment. It's not like we'll live together forever. I'm just asking if I can invite them for just one day, or even half a day.
"That's why I'm saying no. If you can't accept it, leave this apartment."
What? Why are you talking about me leaving?
"If you can't obey me, I don't need you. I don't even want to live with you."
I saw Connor spit those words out with hate, and something inside me snapped. Fine, if you say so, I'll leave. But once I leave, I'm not paying the rent here, okay? Can you afford to live on your own, Connor?
"Humph, worried about money? My mom's a homemaker, but she makes big money. $2,000 rent is nothing to her."
I thought Connor was just ranting, but it turns out he plans to rely on his mother's income. I was more stunned than angry. I really can't understand Connor's dependent thinking. Why did I marry this man? I never thought I'd see the day when I could not trust my judgment of men. I threw down the planner I had been writing in and pulled a suitcase from the closet. The closet was filled with the stuff my mother-in-law had brought over, and my belongings had been pushed to the back. Connor seemed a bit flustered as he watched me pack calmly, but in the end, he said nothing. I finished packing, headed for the door without a word to Connor, and ran into my mother-in-law, just back from shopping. "Oh, such big luggage. Are you going on a trip?" "No, I'm going back to my parents' house." "Huh?" My mother-in-law seemed unable to process what I'd said. Her eyes widened. "Thank you for everything, like the housework and the sarcastic comments. Please be happy with Connor." "What? Wait a minute, Cecilia!" I slipped past my restraining mother-in-law and went outside. I dragged my heavy suitcase to catch the bus back to my parents' house. My parents laughed uproariously at the whole story. Even I was annoyed by their laughter, as if they were saying I was petty. Hey, it's not a laughing matter.
Sorry. Cecilia, you are quite the character. Getting that angry over a comment about your parents?
Was it a case of an eye for an eye? Even my usually reserved mother was covering her mouth and shaking her shoulders with laughter.
Don't worry. One day, Connor will introduce you to an apartment.
Dad, what are you talking about? There's no way Connor would let me have a room. I looked at my father in disbelief, but he just laughed with my mother and never explained his words. Eventually, I became busy with work, and thoughts of Connor and the apartment completely slipped my mind. I was still living with my parents and saw them every day, but we hadn't talked about the apartment since that day. Half a year had passed since I was kicked out of the apartment by Connor. Worn out from early morning commutes and late night overtime, I was leading a lazy life, sleeping through the day on my days off. My parents unexpectedly approached me.
Finally awake? We're thinking of going to the apartment where Connor lives. Want to join us?
Still half asleep, I couldn't understand what my father was saying, so I tilted my head in confusion. Seeing me standing there, lost in thought, my mother lost her patience and forcefully pushed me from behind. "Come on, get dressed quickly. Put on something really nice." Encouraged by my mother, I put on a dress I'd never worn before. It was a high-brand, quite expensive gift from my parents for my birthday, so I never had the inclination to wear it and kept it tucked away. Looking more closely, I realized that both my mother and father were also dressed in high-brand clothes they usually wouldn't wear. It was as if they were showing off their earnings. Before I knew it, I was transported to the apartment building where Connor had lived. I thought we would be turned away at the auto-locked entrance, but that worry was unnecessary. The person we were looking for was standing there in the entrance, dumbfounded. Connor and his mother-in-law were surrounded by a large amount of luggage, standing still in the entrance. Upon seeing me, Connor's face contorted.
Hey, Cecilia, what's going on? We've been kicked out of our apartment.
Kicked out? Did you pay the rent? I thought it was an obvious question, but Connor looked away, embarrassed.
I paid it. I even went into debt to make the payment.
I was utterly dumbfounded by Connor's words. As I suspected, the claim that mother-in-law was earning money was a lie. And yet, Connor and mother-in-law kept up the pretense, living in a luxury apartment, even going into debt. I would have moved out long ago. So why were you kicked out? Did you cause any trouble or something? Connor shook his head, having no clue. Mother-in-law, who had been silently listening, also seemed to have no idea. Mother-in-law, who had been silently listening, also seemed to have no idea, looking at the luggage in the entrance shamefacedly.
Ha 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 ha!
The mood was broken by my father's laughter. His hearty laugh echoed through the entrance. My mother also covered her mouth elegantly, as if laughing. "What's so funny, Dad?"
No, I'm sorry. It's just amusing. Connor's room, we'll give it to Cecilia. If you don't want to use one, we can arrange for a new one. What? What are you talking about?
Connor's voice rose in confusion before mine. Mother-in-law, like me, was bewildered, her gaze wandering.
Didn't you know? This apartment had been owned by our company for the past 3 months.
Connor stared at my father, his eyes wide open. My parents are the presidents of the company. With my added explanation, mother-in-law's mouth fell open as if she couldn't believe it. It was understandable. I hadn't told Connor that my father was a real estate agent's president. More to the point, my mother was the president of a subsidiary under my father's company. Together, they were a successful entrepreneurial couple. Perhaps I inherited those genes because I had an exceptional talent in sales. Connor must have misunderstood my family to be poor, based on the clothes we wore when meeting him and the fact that I went to college on a scholarship, but that was a mistake. Connor's anger was then directed at me.
Why didn't you tell me that Cecilia's dad is the company's president? If I had known, I would've...
And what if you had known? Just so you know, I'm not living here on my parents' dime, unlike you, who's always relying on mother-in-law. Surprisingly, it was not Connor but mother-in-law who accepted the reality quicker. Maybe she judged the hierarchy at a glance by looking at my mother's high-end clothing. Suddenly, with a look of trying to gauge my parents' mood, she began to speak. I sold the house because Connor said to move here. If we're kicked out, we'll have nowhere to live. Mother-in-law glances at my parents' faces, but neither of them breaks a smile. It's terrifying even to me, their actual daughter, that their eyes aren't smiling. My mother smiles softly to reassure mother-in-law and politely brings up the subject. You've been behind on rent for over 3 months, haven't you? We've sent reminders and called many times, but with no response, we've had to proceed with eviction. I look at Connor, wondering if he really was behind, and he quickly looks away. It seems that he could only pay his debts for the first 3 months. Mother-in-law's situation was the same, and she looks uncomfortable being scolded by my mother. Can't you do something about it? Please? You're the company's president, right? Mother-in-law pleads with my parents. However, my father firmly pushes mother-in-law away.
I'm the president and I've decided on the eviction. You must comply.
You're trying to live well without paying rent. Isn't that too selfish? Cornered by my parents, mother-in-law looks to Connor for help. But Connor stays still, not budging. As if he's abandoning mother-in-law, as if he doesn't want to get involved, he just stands there. I feel anger bubbling up again at his indifferent behavior. I've thought about it for 6 months. I can't reconcile with Connor. Let's get a divorce.
What? Wait, divorce?
I glare at the flustered Connor. I can't live with someone who insults my parents. My parents look at me, almost dazzled by the words I've declared.
What am I going to do now?
Connor falls to his knees on the ground, dejected. Though I want to keep watching his ridiculous figure, I'm not that heartless. You need to find a way to pay the overdue rent. Why not sell all your furniture and stuff? You won't have anywhere to take it anyway. I glance at the pile of Connor and mother-in-law's belongings in the entrance. Despite the unpaid rent, there are many luxurious items like brand name products and watches. Selling them might help a bit. Feeling a little reluctant to leave them stranded, I began to efficiently sort through the unattended luggage on the floor.
The truck should be here soon. Let's transport everything to our warehouse for now.
My father also cooperated with me. As Connor and mother-in-law sulked, unable to do anything, the belongings that had occupied the entrance were quickly put away, leaving only the valuable brand clothing, jewelry, and watches. Why don't you visit our shop later? We also deal in buying watches and jewelry. With a business smile, my mother hands her business card to mother-in-law. It was a completely dazzling move. She kicks Connor and mother-in-law out of the apartment and doesn't forget to promote her business. I never feel like I can catch up to my parents. And I still can't be as ruthless as my parents when it comes to business. As I'm absent-mindedly staring at my parents, my father says with a calm face,
People who judge others by appearance and call them poor don't belong in this apartment.
With those words, I was certain. My parents were holding a grudge against what Connor had said. Connor seemed desperate to pay the rent, repeatedly borrowing money everywhere. Not only from lenders, but also from his colleagues and superiors. It became a topic in the company that Connor never returned the money. Connor lost his place in the company and was forced to resign after paying back all the money he had borrowed from company employees. Mother-in-law, who had been living with him and was only trying to benefit from him, was probably guilty as well. After being kicked out of the apartment, mother-in-law moved into the company dormitory with Connor and started working as a part-time worker at a factory. The fact that the factory where she was working was part of my father's corporate group is nothing short of laughable. 1 month after Connor was kicked out of the apartment, I successfully got divorced. Additionally, I received a room in the apartment as a lifetime gift from my parents, and I'm leading a comfortable life. Work is as busy as ever, but I have been promoted for my sales skills. Now that I'm single, I'm thinking of devoting myself even more